In a few minutes, Don Beitz is going to give us a bit of a history of the nutrient requirement publications. Don was responsible for chairing some of the committees responsible for that. But before Don speaks, we have with us Greg Sims. He's from the NAS. He's Executive Director, Division Earth and Life Sciences. Make a few comments from the National Academy side about the activities. And Greg, if you want to share your comments, then I'll introduce Don.
Good afternoon. As Merrill said, my name is Greg Sims. I'm the Executive Director of the Academy's Division on Earth and Life Studies, which is one of 7 primary program units here at the National Academy of Sciences. And I was here in the building. My advisory committee was meeting down the hall, so glad I'm able to join you today. And DELS, just so you know, programmatically, as I said, DELS is one of seven main program units here at the academies. Within DELS, there are 11 boards that are actually the units that carry out the studies, the independent consensus studies, and the convenings to which we do our work. And one of those is the Board on Agriculture and Natural Resources that Robin Shane directs here at the academies. You know, a banner, which was created by the Academy 75 years ago. We're celebrating the 75th anniversary of Banner this year. And as the name suggests, Banner is the unit of the Academies that's responsible for doing studies and convenings on issues of agricultural production, forestry, wildlife, and the use of land, water, and other natural resources. And these questions often arise. The questions that the government comes to ask us to advise on arise often because of conflicts between competing uses for these resources. So, you know, it's not surprising that a key area of this, of the kinds of questions we're asked to do is at the nexus of food and animal production. And so as you'll hear from Don shortly, the work that the academies have done on animal nutrition actually predates Banner by 25 years. We're celebrating the 100th anniversary of the Animal Nutrition series here at the Academy. So it really is an amazing legacy here of our work in these areas. And the animal nutrition work started with the question of how to increase the food supply for a growing national population. And it's the same question in many ways that we're asked for today. How do we feed a world of 8 billion, 10 billion people? But we also want to know how to make food more nutritious, how to ensure the animal welfare, how to reduce our impact on climate, how to adapt to climate, how to produce more with increasingly scarce land, water, and other natural resources. And these need to be placed in the work of animal nutrition which is squarely at the center of Banner's mission. And for that reason, the animal nutrition program here is highly valued in Banner and highly valued by the academies as an institution, not just because of its historical legacy, but because of its relevance to key questions in society. So I'd like to thank you here for being here at the academies. And I guess next up is Don Beitz, Distinguished Professor in the Department of Animal Science at Iowa State. And I think you've already seen his bio sketch in your program, but what it doesn't say is that he's also is the former chair of the Committee on Animal Nutrition and the chairman of one of our best sellers, the update we did on nutrient requirements for dogs and cats. 2 non-food species that nevertheless play a very important role in enhancing the quality of human lives. So, Don?
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity, I guess I do, of talking to you about the National Academy of Science and the Committee on Animal Nutrition, especially with a focus on the nutrient requirements of publications of the NRC. I got a call just it seems like about a week ago, or a little bit more, that the person that was going to give this presentation had some health issues, and he wanted to know if I could take his place. And I had a busy week ahead of me, but I thought, well, I'll try it. So you're going to get what I tried. So we'll see how it goes. You might want to, if you want, and that won't offend me, move your chairs so that you can see these screens. They're maybe a little small for when you're far away. And I will go through a few slides to tell you a little bit about the nutrient requirement series, which have been very important for the discipline of animal nutrition in the world. Whoops. How do I change this? Oh. Is it the top one? Guess I should have gotten instructions ahead of time. Well, when we talk about nutrient requirement series, we talk about them in casual way of the NRCs. And just a couple comments about the National Research Council. It plays a major role in establishing nutrient requirements because it works with the Committee on Animal Nutrition. The NRC is a private non-profit organization that was established in 1916. It's actually the working arm of the National Academy of Science. We can put much credit for the development of a national science program to Abraham Lincoln in 1863. He established the National Academy of Sciences and to serve the nation by furthering science and technology. The National Research Council, as I mentioned, was established in 1916 by Woodrow Wilson, who asked the National Academy of Science to provide government with broader scientific research service to assist in military actions. It's amazing to me as I was reading through this, the role of the needs of the military in food production and nutrient requirement series. 1917, the Animal Nutrition Subcommittee of the Committee on Food and Nutrition was established, and the Division of Biology and Agriculture was established. I wanted to comment, the Animal Nutrition Subcommittee came out with a publication called The Plan for Cooperative Experiments on Protein Requirements for the Growth of Cattle. That was, I believe, the first publication on the national level from these organizations. 1919, the Division of Biology and Agriculture was formed, which is, I'll show in a moment, was the predecessor for the Board on Agriculture and Natural Resources. Animal Nutrition became a part of the Division of Biology and Agriculture in 1919, and that's considered the beginnings of the Nutrient Requirement Series. The Committee on Animal Nutrition as a committee, a standing committee, was established in 1928. The Agriculture Committee that was established in 1917 transitioned to with the needs of the times and so forth to other names. Biology of Agriculture, Forestry, Botany, and the Fisheries was added, was the new name because of addition in responsibilities. 1919, Division of Biology and Agriculture became the official name. 1944, Agriculture Board, and 1973, BARR, B-A-R-R, that was a common abbreviation for a number of years, Board on Agriculture and Renewable Resources, that was changed to Board on Agriculture and the Board on Agriculture and Natural Resources banner as we know it today. The hierarchy of the Committee on Animal Nutrition could be described in this way. We have the National Academy of Sciences, that parallel organization is the National Academy of Engineering and as NAE and the Institute of Medicine. And today those have been blended into one organization called the National Academy of Engineering or Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine, or NASEM, or simply that's too long too many words, and we just call it the National Academies or the Academies. The working arm, as I mentioned earlier, of those academies is the National Research Council, and one of the committees or boards of that National Research Council, as was mentioned earlier, is the Board on Agriculture and Natural Resources, and a committee of the Board on Agriculture and Natural Resources, while in existence, was the Committee on Animal Nutrition, or CAN. We all called it CAN, which was short. Subcommittee for Horse Nutrition, I use that as an example. So the Committee on Animal Nutrition would establish subcommittees to do its work, so to speak. And just to illustrate the horse publications, the first one was published in 1949, recommended nutrient allowances for horses, and then the terminology changed a bit to nutrient requirements for horses on the second edition. As new data came out, then another edition was prepared, and we now have the fifth edition, 1989, and so maybe it's about time to have another one. I remember while I served on Committee on Animal Nutrition, we established a working timeline of the major species, dairy, beef, swine, publishing them every 7 years, new editions, and some of the minor species every 12 years. Well, that was a general guideline and wasn't always adhered to because of finances and the considered needs. Early goals of the Committee on Animal Nutrition, well, President Hoover ran on the theme of a chicken in every pot because food supply was short at that time. Evidently, I wasn't living then, but that's what I read. And he, as I say, campaigned on that. Food was a challenge, provide leadership to agricultural committees. This was an early goal of the Committee on Animal Nutrition by defining animal nutrient needs and feed nutrient values to allow farmers to improve cost effectiveness of feeding regimes. And that was the goal of CAN, to increase food supply, increase efficiency, basically, which has been the theme of our conference so far. The committee would utilize knowledge of essentiality of nutrients as they were being determined. And that was an exciting time, as I think about it, to be on the committee and saying, oh my gosh, there's a new nutrient that was just discovered. The 1928 riboflavin was discovered as an essential nutrient for chickens, vitamin K, pantothenic acid. Exciting times to, if you find that the nutrient is required, you got to figure out how much is required, or how much and how you should feed accordingly. The last item is face challenges in animal agriculture because of the Great Depression. That was tough times in this country. Food was a problem, and so Committee on Animal Nutrition was facing the challenge by trying to improve efficiency of using animals to improve food production. The first reports of the Subcommittee on Animal Nutrition, a few comments there. In 1921, the publication was produced titled The Cooperative Experiments Upon Protein Requirements for the Growth of Cattle. Also on formulation methods of experimentation in animal production. And thirdly, the determination of protein requirements of animals and of protein values of farm feeds and rations. This was in the early days of, as I say, of the Committee on Animal Nutrition in 1921. Moving ahead, some early publications starting in 1942. One of the big issues at that time was phosphorus supplementation of diets, and the phosphorus supplements at the time were rich in fluorine, so that was a problem, and the Committee on Animal Nutrition addressed that issue with a publication, The Fluorine Problem of Livestock Feeding. Iodine was found to be an essential nutrient, and a publication on its necessity was established. The nutrition of swine during the war emergency. Yes, we were going to use pigs to feed people then too. Nutrition and reproduction of farm animals. 5 suggestions for meeting the wartime poultry feed situation. And one part of that publication was the use of alternate protein source such as soybean meal. It's hard to think of a soybean meal as an alternate, but because today it's such a standard of feeding animals. And number 6, war emergency plans for raising calves and heifers. So the whole concept of Committee on Animal Nutrition then, as it existed throughout the years, was to get more food per unit of input. In 1943, some of the publications are listed here. The effect of storage on grain on their nutritive value. The emphasis of the committee was beginning to focus a bit more on feeds, and that was feed composition was added to the reports. Is animal protein an essential constituent of swine and poultry rations? Meat and bone meal were standard feeds, and are they essential? Was the topic. Number 3, suggestions for meeting the poultry feed situation during 1943. Again, wartime, war stimulation. Number 4, use of phosphorus-containing substitutes for bone meal and livestock feeding with particular reference to the fluorine hazard. So those were some early publications. In 1944, the publications began to focus more on specific nutrient requirements. First titles were in 44 were the nutrient allowances for poultry and nutrient allowances for swine. And in 45, the recommended nutrient allowance for beef cattle, dairy cattle, and sheep. And in 53, the subsequent publications used the title Nutrient Requirements, and that's been used ever since. Well, I just thought I'd show a copy of the first publication that was made. The first publication actually put the names of the authors right there on the front page, and it was numbered 1. This was the number 1 publication, a classic publication of the Committee on Animal Nutrition. Then, after following the first one, there were others. And here's a slide showing pictures of the first dairy cattle publication, the first publication on domestic animals. I haven't had a chance to read that, but I wondered what was in domestic animals. And the first poultry, I've already indicated, first beef and the first sheep. And then there was a second wave of publications going from left to right, foxes and mink. And I guess that was all related to the fact that foxes and mink were important sources of fur at the time. And I don't know if that will be revised or not. That might be the only time that the one will be used. Dogs, a publication on dogs, the second one. The third one, rabbits. Number 4, going left to right, laboratory animals, focusing on rats and mice. The 5th one I can't read, whatever that is. The 7th one, the last one. It's fish? Okay. All right, that's the fish publication. First one, that's important. A fish man showed that, right? Noted that. And the last one is cats. Then the next slide I showed showing some pictures of the recent publications. The one on the left, dogs and cats. Format on the front pages have changed a bit. The title is very prominent: swine, horses, small ruminants, fish, and shrimp. Well, I think all of you are pretty well aware of this, but I looking back and thinking about this, this is really a classic system for development of a publication, and I thought I'd emphasize that. First, there's an established need for a new publication. And that's made by the Committee on Animal Nutrition, the brainchild of a group of people that sit around and think about what's needed next. Stakeholders have a big role in indicating whether a new publication is needed. Then a charge is developed by the NRC and CAN to a subcommittee. And then there's a search for candidates for the subcommittee membership led by CAN. Then number 4, appointment of a subcommittee is made, and that's approved finally by the chair of the National Research Council on advice from the CAN, or Committee on Animal Nutrition. Number 5, examine evidence and hold face-to-face meetings. 3, 4, whatever's needed, meetings to get the publication submitted and for review eventually. I don't know how many, Mike, how many committees meetings has your dairy committee had? And you're finally getting to 2 here and some others. So I think 3 or 4 meetings are fairly common. The Committee on Animal Nutrition, subcommittee on the individual publication. Oversight is provided by the Committee on Animal Nutrition and by the NRC. Report on findings, conclusions, and recommendations is based on rigorous analysis of data. I know that the important point is that the data must be from refereed literature, not from unpublished data, and there's tremendous emphasis on making sure that appropriate data, refereed data, are used. The report is drafted and then reviewed by a committee of experts, suggested by a Committee on Animal Nutrition, again approved by the NRC. And then the publication is printed, marketed, and distributed by the National Academy Press. That's the usual procedure for coming up with an NRC, as we talk about them in casual terms. The content of a nutrient requirement publication has changed markedly over time. The original publications were just a few pages, and now they're several hundred pages. And more modern publications are very inclusive in talking about the nutrients required for the animal species. Digestion, biochemistry, and physiology of the nutrients is elaborated on. Welfare and environmental aspects of the nutrients. Even the health aspects of the nutrients is indicated in the publications. The nutrient requirement tables are prepared using best judgment on published data, including many, many variables. Nutrient composition tables are included, and now later publications are including more of the model evaluations and prediction equations, and I've listed some of the publications that have models of different stages of development included. Well, how are the publications paid for? And that's indicated on this slide. The National Research Council makes contributions in kind and sometimes financial for the publications. National Academy Press has an input. The users of publications, federal organizations have contributed. ARS has been very important over the years. FDA, NIH, depending on the individual publications. Private organizations, AFIA. We have a representative here today of the AFIA, and thanks to them for all their support over the years. The Canadian Feed Ingredient Association as well. Pharmaceutical and feed companies, various foundations, and the animal commodity groups, such as National Pork Producers supporting the swine publication and so forth. Sponsors, of course, vary for each publication depending on the species that's covered. Well, why do we need to write new publications every 5, 7, 10 years? Because of the essentiality of nutrients. That was an earlier emphasis when new nutrients were being discovered. Fat to lean ratios of carcasses has changed over years. That changes requirements. Demand for saturated fat in the human diet and other issues related to human diets. Demand for low-fat foods. Use of metabolic modifiers, such as in beef production, swine production. New feed processing technologies on nutrient bioavailability. Dry corn, flaking corn, so forth. Development of models for animal productivity. That whole model development, looking back, was stimulated markedly by the contributions of Lee Baldwin at the University of California, Davis. Using the swine as an example, just to show how different developments led to later publications. The first one that was published, that's not 1994, it should be 1944. Sorry about that. But then there were 11 nutrients known, and so TDN, crude protein, calcium, phosphorus, carotene, and other nutrients were a part of the publication. Then the next edition included lysine, tryptophan, and methionine requirements with advancements of knowledge on requirements of individual amino acids. That was then added. Vitamin K was deleted. Vitamin A was deleted when the earlier edition included vitamin A. Turns out even a later edition then added vitamin A back as a requirement. So knowledge changed over time. And you can see how as we go down from edition 1 to edition 6, the number of nutrients focused in the publications increased. And edition 11 has been the last, and now there's 36 nutrients are considered, and a computer model has been indicated. First publications were more like 10 pages, and for the swine, and now the last edition was 189 pages. Reference numbers 69 to 1524. So you can see how progress has changed as our knowledge has increased, and it seems like maybe every committee wants to make a better publication than the previous one, and that always results in a larger publication. Well, what do we do with these reports? And thinking about it, you can really make quite an extensive list of how these nutrient requirement publications are utilized. For sure, they stimulate future scientific investigations because the publications result in identification of gaps in our knowledge. When a committee gets together to write up a publication on swine, you start realizing, well, what do we not know? What nutrient requirements do we not know yet? So that establishes the future investigations. Investigate or educate the next generation of students for industry and academics. These publications are used extensively in a variety of classes at universities, etc. They serve as a central component in outreach programs to improve care of research farm and companion animals. Publications have stimulated intense discussions about sustainability in animal agriculture, food safety, animal care and well-being, environmental quality, and international trade and development. And I would say the last one is very important in that it provides a principal reference on animal nutrition for academia, animal industry, consultants, and producers. The publications are often considered the Bible for animal nutrition. So great responsibility to the Committee on Animal Nutrition. The nutrient requirement series are used worldwide, and this is just an illustration of the use of publications worldwide has been increased markedly by translating into the respective languages indicated. Bulgarian, Chinese. Look at all the publications that have been translated into Chinese for use in nutritionists and farmers, etc., in China, Japanese, Korean, and Spanish. This particular slide illustrates the latest nutrient requirement publications. 2016 was the last edition for beef, 2012 swine, 2011 fish and shrimp, 2007 small ruminants, horses in 2007, dogs and cats in 2006. And I understand that there's been some discussion, maybe it's time to publish a new dogs and cats publication. 2001 dairy, and now that 8th edition is underway and soon to be released, maybe yet this year. 1995 laboratory animals, last for that species. 1994 poultry, and the 10th edition is underway on that, and that'll be released year, 2 years, depending on a number of variables. Mink and foxes earlier, 78 non-human primates, and 1977 rabbits. And we've had within discussion of the National Animal Nutrition Program, maybe it's time to write a publication on zebrafish. Because how should you feed zebrafish is a question that people that are using zebrafish as animal models are seriously considering. And need information. How's the best way to feed zebrafish if they're going to be so popular as an animal model? These publications are a classic example of public-private relationships, and I just include this slide to illustrate the latest poultry publication that is a combination of several private companies, government organizations, commodity groups in supporting the publication of the upcoming poultry update. The Committee on Animal Nutrition released over time several other topic reports besides nutrient requirement series. It's amazing what a group of people getting together talking about what's needed and what suggestions can come up regarding what's important that should be written about. And some of these become very classic publications. Safety of, looking at a few of these, safety of dietary supplements by horses, dogs, and cats, mineral tolerances. This is a classic publication. Very useful on mineral tolerances, air emissions, the role of chromium. And I can remember when I was part of the Committee on Animal Nutrition, we came up with the idea that, there should be a publication on chromium. People are saying that it might be a nutrient or might not be a nutrient, so a committee was established to write a publication on chromium. Selenium was published. A taurine requirement of the cat. So many of these, as I say, are classics and set the standard for excellence and for the science of animal nutrition. The nutrient requirement publications are prepared by the National Academy Press. I should comment a little bit about the National Academy Press, which is a publishing entity of NASM, the academies, and that organization published the canned reports and has throughout the years. Income from the sales of publications was kept within press for future publications. And Charlotte Kirk-Bear played a role in helping change the business model a bit in 2004, where some of the income used that resulted from the publications was used for future publications. of the nutrient requirement series, because every publication of every nutrient series has its challenge of finding enough money to publish it. At one time, I think the publication, during my tenure, I should say, publications cost about $300,000 per issue. Now that's gone up a bit, and that's a significant amount of money to locate. Robin Shane, thanks to her, she provided these data on just to illustrate some of the sales of the different publications that may be of interest. The top sellers are the nutrient requirement series for poultry, dairy cattle, beef cattle, and swine. And those are the money makers of these species. And in fact, the nutrient requirement series are the major money makers for the National Academy Press. So they're very interested in us publishing nutrient requirement series from a financial point of view. There was a publication made when the Committee on Animal Nutrition was 70 years old. And that publication listed the chairs of the Committee on Animal Nutrition. And those are listed on this particular slide. The first committee, formal committee, was 1928. And Dr. Howe was chair of that committee for 13 years. Maynard of Maynard and Loosely fame for 4 years. Norris for 20 years. Then Beeson for 8 years, Cunha for 3 years, and then the Committee on Animal Nutrition established a 3-year term for chairs. Provide some variety, I guess. Olchin, Fontenot, Ulrey, Morris, Johnson, Hintz, myself, and Gary Cromwell. And Gary Cromwell is listed last because that was the end of the Committee on Animal Nutrition. So let's don't blame it on Gary. But the last committee had these folks as the chair, as members, with Gary Cromwell as the chair, Rosalina Angelo from University of Maryland, she considered a poultry nutritionist, Jesse Goff, a dairy, Ron Hardy, fish, Kristen Johnson, beef, Brian McBride, a biochemist, ruminant nutritionist, Keith Reinhardt, poultry, Lee Southern, swine, and Don Topliff, equine. So the Committee on Animal Nutrition had a guideline that there should be somebody from every major species of animal agriculture and have some geographic variety. Speaking of the ending of the Committee on Animal Nutrition, in the 1998 or sometime shortly thereafter, the Board on Agriculture and Natural Resources conducted a review of the status of the Committee on Animal Nutrition. Should we continue as it's been going on for 70 years, or should some kind of a change in organization and function be made? The review committee of Banner recommended that the activities of CAN be transferred to Banner, with the understanding that Banner would have a few more animal scientists on its membership, and those animal scientists on Banner would basically serve as CAN. And the final outcome was that CAN activities were assumed by Banner. And now we have a new organization that you learned a bit about from Merlin Lindemann this morning, that the National Animal Nutrition Program complements some of the activities of Banner in this way. Help with fundraising, and that was exemplified with the latest poultry. Suggest authors for publications. The NANP committee recommends reviewers for the nutrient requirement publications. As Merlin indicated, the coordinating committee of NAN NANP has subcommittees that provide high-quality feed composition data. That's always been an issue with all these nutrient requirement series, where the feed composition tables for every publication might not have the same value for the same feed. Sometimes corn would have 8% protein, sometimes 9%, and so forth. Well, isn't corn corn? That would be the question. So a subcommittee of the NAMP is working very hard to have a standardized set of composition tables for use by for the future publications of the nutrient requirement series. And the same thing, same concept, provide uniformity of animal models for use in modeling nutrient requirement series. So that brings me to a more specific discussion about the role of the feed composition subcommittee. They've been functioning over 5+ years to bring together data and research resources in the area of feed composition, foster communication among those collecting feed composition information, and facilitate efficiencies and consistencies in data collection and maintenance. And the role of the modeling committee is to improve the predictive technologies and tools to best utilize available platforms, and secondly, to work with researchers to effectively share, combine, manage, manipulate, and analyze models and modeling information. Mark Hannigan has been chairing that committee, doing a very effective job, and Dr. Miller at Nebraska for the feed composition committee. So some of the accomplishments are listed on this slide. Both this feed composition committee has been working very hard to carry out their objectives, and their results of their work is now being added to the website for the NANP for use by animal nutritionists throughout the world. And I won't go through all of these, but they've, number 8, they've organized a symposium and participate in conferences to help in sharing what they're doing and learn from each other how to proceed for the future. The accomplishments and current activities of the modeling committee are listed here. First accomplishment, they found 2 calculation errors in the dairy cattle model installation program was recompiled to support 64-bit window installation. That was always a discussion among CAN, is how could we have updates prepared in between publications of new editions. And the modeling committee has been working to update and make corrections, etc. And the modeling subcommittee has been coordinating conferences at national meetings to have further discussions about model developments of nutrient requirements, etc. So to make a few concluding statements, number 1, Abraham Lincoln had great foresight in promoting a national science program, and think about all the developments that have happened since the National Academy was established by Abraham Lincoln. The CAN, Committee on Animal Nutrition, has made great contributions over the years to the science, practice, and teaching of animal nutrition. So we have many people to thank. Contributions were made by hundreds of volunteers. All the people working on CAN didn't get paid for their activity. They got their expenses paid, yes, but that was it for it. So it was basically volunteer scientists serving as innovators, writers, reviewers, and users of CAN publications. Number 4, the Committee on Animal Nutrition and the resulting publications are a great example of what can happen from effective public-private interactions. And number 5 is the significance, and the publications are a benchmark for animal nutrition. So one last word I guess I could say is happy birthday to the Nutrient Requirement Series for becoming 100 years old. What will the next 100 years bring? Maybe most of us won't see that. So thank you very much for listening to me tell you a little bit about the history of the Nutrient Requirement Series. Thank you very much.